Hi everyone, my name is Amber, welcome back to my channel. This is my first book unhaul of the year. So I am really bad at unhauling books that I haven't read yet, or at least haven't given it a go, but I have been a bit more harsh than I maybe normally am, just because I need some space on my shelves. These are overflowing. These are all books that I have to read and they need to go on this bookshelf somehow. I need to get my act together, but most of these books are ones that I have already read and I've spoken about in previous wrap-ups. I will give you a brief review here, but if you want to see my full thoughts, then I would recommend going to check out the wrap-ups that they're in. I don't have these in any particular order, so let's just get going because there are quite a few of them, probably about 25. So the first book that I am unhauling is one that I'm quite sad about because I had high hopes for this and the production value is great, and that is Hyde by Kirsten White. So admittedly, I've never really loved a Kirsten White book. I've given most of her books that I've read 3 stars. She's probably an author that I need to give up on, to be honest, because her writing style doesn't really work for me. But this is a horror book set in an amusement park, an abandoned one, which makes it horror-y. And I love the style of this. I love that there's a map of the amusement park here with annotations. I just didn't love this, so I gave it 3 stars and I won't reread it, so I'm not hanging on to it. I'm going to sell this, I think, and make some money from it. The next one I have is quite controversial and I'm probably going to get a bunch of unsubscribers, and I'm sorry in advance, and that is The Sword of Kaigen. I only gave this one 3 stars. It wasn't very impressive to me. The beginning part was very intriguing. I love the introduction to the world building, to all of the characters, and then the action scene that I thought happened towards the end, going by all the quotes, actually happens like a third of the way through, and then after that it's just kind of meh, post-war, post-battle stuff, and it's just not as interesting, I didn't think. And then one of my favourite characters wasn't really in it anymore, so I didn't love this book and I'm a bit disappointed. So I'm unhauling this. Hopefully someone else can enjoy it. I don't really know what to do with this one. Probably sell it as well so someone else can enjoy it, hopefully more than I did. I'm getting rid of The Only Good Indians. I gave this one 1 star. I don't really want to talk about it. It was very weird, terribly paced. I'm quite sad because I was expecting to love this one. Next, I'm unhauling Queen of Coin and Whispers. I did really enjoy this one. I gave this one 3.5 stars, but it's not one that I'm going to reread. So this one actually brought up an interesting discussion because it's marketed as a sapphic fantasy book, but there's actually no magical elements in it, and it kind of had me thinking about what we classify as fantasy and if fantasy does have to have magic in it or some sort of magical fantastical stuff, or if political books can just be labelled as fantasy. Otherwise, what else would we label them as? So it did have me thinking. I enjoyed the relationship in this one. I felt like it was a little bit rushed, and I don't think it had enough whispering, if that makes sense. So one of the characters is the Queen's Whisperer and kind of like a spy master sort of thing, and she didn't really do much, so that was a bit sad. Anyway, I gave this one 3.5 stars. I would recommend reading it. I'm just not going to reread it again, which is why I'm unhauling it. Next we have Deadline, and I think I have Feed and Blackout somewhere in this pile as well, but obviously it's out of order. This is the second book in the Newsflash series, I think. I read Feed, the first book, a while back, like a good 10 years ago, and I only gave it 3 stars. It wasn't great. It's a book about zombies, and I tried rereading it because I really wanted to recap it and get onto this one finally, but I just couldn't reread it. It was just so boring and I don't like the main characters, so I've decided to just unhaul the trilogy and make room on my shelves because I'm not going to finish it and I can't be bothered. Next, I'm getting rid of The Roommate. This one was marketed as a TikTok book. I'm not actually on BookTok, but I thought I would give this one a go because other BookTok books I've read, well, one of them has been a hit, the others not so much. I thought this had potential. I realised about a quarter of the way through reading this one that I'm really over the really experienced guy getting with a really inexperienced woman trope. I just can't be bothered with it. I get so bored. So I DNF'd it about 50 pages in, if that, and I probably won't be checking out anything else by this author unless she does something new. Let me know if she has, I have no idea. Next, I'm unhauling Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin. Again, this is one that I gave 3.5 stars, so I didn't hate it. It's just not one that I'm going to reread, and if I want to read about Targaryen history, I'll read World of Ice and Fire, which I also have. I wanted to read this one just before the show came out so that I wouldn't be surprised or spoiled about any of the history that happened, and I liked it. I enjoyed the history, but it kind of felt like it fell apart towards the end. I feel like he maybe got bored of writing it, which he seems to have done with the entire Song of Ice and Fire series, but the beginning was really strong, and I'd like to read more about Aegon and his 2 sister wives. I think they're quite interesting, and their sons have potential potential. Yeah, I won't reread this one. I'm not going to refer to it at any point really, so I'm getting rid of it. I'm also unhauling Kingdom of the Wicked. This is the first book in this trilogy, and I have the second book again somewhere. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It's a YA book about witches and demons and princes of hell, and this first one was really good. I really enjoyed it, and then the second book I didn't love. It was very boring. There were a lot of sex scenes, and that's not really what I wanted to read about. I wanted to read about the princes of hell and what they were doing to each other. That made that sound really wrong. So I'm unhauling this because I don't really want to own the trilogy. I'm going to read the third book at some point, but I'm not really in a rush, and I don't need this on my shelf because I'm not going to reread it. I'm also unhauling A Torch Against the Night. This is the second book in the Ember Quartet. I tried reading this one. I reread the first one in anticipation of finishing off this series finally, and then I just didn't really care, and then my friend said that it's not the strongest series anyway, so I didn't really feel the need to carry on, read the second and third books just to finish off the trilogy. So I've decided I'm going to DNF this series. I just said trilogy, but it's a quartet because I just can't be bothered to carry on. It was very meh for me, and maybe I would have liked it more if I had read it when I was younger, like I did with the first book. Now it's not really for me. Next, I'm unhauling Felix Ever After, and the only reason I'm unhauling this is because I don't think I'm going to reread it. I gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's a contemporary book about Felix, who is transgender. Someone dead names him. Felix wants to get revenge. The only reason I knocked a star off of this one was because of who Felix ended up with. I really didn't like the romance, the final romance, endgame romance in this one. Otherwise, it was a really good book, and this is such a nice addition with these flower edges. It's taking up space on my shelf, and I'm not going to reread it, and my partner probably won't read it either because he doesn't read YA. Yeah, I'm unhauling it, and it will find a better home. I'm unhauling Empire of Storms by Sarah J Maas because I've already unhauled all of the other books I have in this edition because I collected the US hardbacks before they changed the covers. I haven't read this one, so I can't review it for you, but I will read it this year, I think. I'm unhauling the Alice 6 because I gave this 3 stars and it didn't really stand out to me. I don't understand the hype, and while I am continuing with the series, I'm getting the second book from the library because I don't want to pay for it. I don't feel the need to have the series on my shelf, so I'm going to get rid of this, and again, hopefully it can find a better home. This one, it was just meh. I don't really have loads to say about it. It was just an okay book with okay characters, and I'm intrigued enough to read the second book, but I've heard that that's actually quite a bad one, so I don't know, maybe I shouldn't. I'm unhauling Into the Jungle. This is a survival thriller book about someone who meets someone when they're backpacking, and she goes to live with him in his home in the jungle. Yeah, I didn't really like the way the author handled anything, and I didn't like it, so I gave this one 2 stars, and I'm getting rid of it. I'm also unhauling The Weight of the Stars. I DNF'd this one. It just really wasn't for me. It was kind of boring. The main characters were annoying, so I don't really want to read it. It's a shame because this is a lovely edition. I love the edges, but I can't be bothered to read it. And I also DNF'd and I'm unhauling Red Clocks. I thought I was going to love this one, but I could not get on board with the writing style. Not sure what it was about it, but it was just meh to me, and I think I read like 50 pages over and over again, and I just didn't want to carry on. I need to somehow move this pile out of the way to get to pile number 2. I've made a mistake. I did an arms workout at the gym today as well, so this is extra hard. Okay, so I'm also unhauling the entire Way of Shadows Night Angel trilogy. I recently read Lightbringer by this author and I hated it. I think I gave it like 1 star, 2 stars, and I've heard this trilogy is worse, so I can't be bothered to read it. It's a shame because I bought these ones years ago from a charity shop and I thought I was getting such a good deal, but I don't think I'm going to enjoy it realistically after hating Lightbringer, and this was his like debut trilogy. In my mind, I don't think it's going to be all that good, and I don't know where the first book is. It's in this bookshelf somewhere, so once I find it, that'll make more space for my other books. I'm unhauling The Marlow Murder Club, which I gave 3 stars. I actually really enjoyed this one. So I live near Marlow, which is a town in Buckinghamshire along the River Thames, and this is about a group of old people who investigate some murders that are happening in the town, and there is a sequel coming out, so I kept hold of this so that I could recap it for recaptains. Now that that's done, I'm unhauling it and I'll get it from the library, or I'll find the sequel in a charity shop or something, because I do want to read it. It's just not one that I really need to own, so I'm not going to reread it. I'm unhauling Jungle, which I recently DNF'd actually in January. This was very boring. I don't think the author is a good author. I don't think he was telling the story very well, but I do want to watch the film because it's got Daniel Radcliffe in it. I'm unhauling Tokyo Ever After. So this is one that I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, but it's not one that I'm going to reread, and I don't really want to collect the series. It's one that I can definitely get from the library if the third book comes out. I've already read the second and I really enjoyed that too. I don't need to keep this in my collection, I don't think, because I'm probably not going to reread it. Hopefully someone will enjoy this one as much as I did. Again, this next one I really enjoyed, but I'm not going to reread it, and that is Breathless. This is a thriller book set on a mountain and there's a serial killer up there. This one had me hooked. I did really enjoy it, and I will be reading Amy McCulloch's next book, which I think is another survival thriller sort of thing, but I'm not going to reread this one now that I know who did it, to be honest, so I'm unhauling it. I'm unhauling Honey Girl because I DNF'd it. I tried reading this 3 times and I just couldn't get past the first few chapters. It was just really boring, so I'm not going to try again, and I'm just going to get rid of it. There's Kingdom of the Cursed as well, which is the second Kingdom of the Wicked book. Obviously these are in no particular order. I've already described this series and why I'm getting rid of it, so that's going on the unhaul pile. I DNF'd The Replacement and I'm unhauling this. This is one that I picked up years and years ago when I first started Booktube. I think it came out in like 2010, and it's about changelings. Yeah, 2010. And I honestly hate this cover. Like, what were they thinking? It's awful. And I didn't really love the book either, so because I DNF'd it, I'm not going to read it. I'm getting rid of it. I'm unhauling The Names They Gave Us by Emery Lord. I love this one, to be honest, but I'm not going to reread the book. This had to go in order to create space on my shelf. So this is a book about a teenage girl called Lucy who is volunteering at a summer camp for troubled teens, and she also has a parent who is dealing with cancer. So it's a very emotional book, and I would recommend reading it if you want to, but I can't hang on to it because I have no space on my shelves. This Mortal Coil, this is another one that I read recently. It's an older YA book. I think this came out in 2014. It was a fun sci-fi book, but it's not one that I'm going to reread. I'm not carrying on with the series, so I'm unhauling it. Oh, we actually have a series that's together. So we have The Finisher and The Keeper. I'm not sure which order these are in, but I started reading one of them, which I think was The Finisher, and I couldn't really get into it, so I DNF'd it. And obviously because I DNF'd it, I'm getting rid of the sequel. I was actually sent these by the publisher years and years ago, unsolicited I think actually, and I just don't really care for them, so off they go. I'm trying to look at all this unhauling as a good thing because it is creating lots of space on my shelves. I found Blackout, which is the 3rd book in the My Grant series. I've spoken about this one already. This is going on the unhaul pile. I've got Queen of Shadows, which I'm also getting rid of because I've got the US hardbacks. I was quite hesitant to get rid of this one because I have tabbed it up. So I think what I'm going to do is keep this until I reread the hardback and then compare my tabs. I read this in like one sitting when it first came out and I really enjoyed it. I actually ran out of tabs partway through, so I'm looking forward to comparing the tabs in these editions, and I will be unhauling this. I'm unhauling Revolution, which I DNF'd. I think this is historical fiction YA. I couldn't really get into it, so I'm unhauling. And then finally, the last one in this video I'm unhauling is History of Wolves. This is another one that I couldn't really get into, and there was some sexual assault, I think, in the beginning that was kind of brushed over, and I don't know if it's sort of addressed later on, but I didn't get that far, so I didn't really want to carry on with it, and I'm not going to reread it or try it again, so this is going on to the unhaul pile. And that is it. It's not my biggest unhaul ever, but I do feel quite good about clearing up some space on my shelves. I do need to find Feed and the other Way of Shadows books so that I can fit a few more books on there, but it's looking much better than it was. These piles have significantly reduced. I'll probably be back soon with another unhaul, probably in a couple of months once I've read some more books, because I don't keep hold of books if I'm not going to reread them. It's just a waste of space for me. I only want books on my shelf that I actually enjoy, love, and will reread and revisit. That was all of them. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you've enjoyed any of these. Let me know how many books you've unhauled recently, and I will speak to you all in the next video. Bye!